Welcome to my channel. And today I want to share a story that will touch your heart and remind you that patience, honesty, and quiet strength can change a life when nothing else seems to work. A story about a young woman who was mocked for her poverty, tested by hardship, and transformed by integrity when an unexpected opportunity crossed her path. So settle in, open your mind, and let's start. The whole village laughed at her, openly and without shame. They called her useless, a girl without value, a shadow that existed only to remind others of how low life could sink. What they never imagined was that someone had been watching her quietly, patiently, from the very beginning. And when the truth finally surfaced, when the mask fell away, their laughter would turn into stunned silence. 500 naira for 3 roasted plantains. Nkiru's sharp voice sliced through the noise of the Afor market like a blade. Not like that orphan girl who almost gives hers away for free. That one was born to be poor. The women around her burst into laughter, nodding and clapping in agreement. At the edge of the market, 23-year-old Zainab Okori kept her eyes on the charcoal fire in front of her. She had learned, over 5 long years, that words could wound, but they could not define her. While Nkiru sat comfortably under a wide, colorful umbrella on a cushioned stool, Zainab stood in the harsh sun, her small wooden cart pushed into a corner where customers passed only if they truly wanted to buy. She had no umbrella, no fancy display, no loud voice to attract attention. What she had was consistency. Before the sun rose each morning, Zainab was already awake, washing plantains at the stream, setting charcoal, and roasting each piece slowly until it reached a perfect golden color. While others in the market discussed whose husband was unfaithful or which pastor had bought a new car, Zainab worked in silence. The market had become her school. She had learned how to read faces, how to recognize who would bargain endlessly and who would pay fairly, who wanted conversation and who wanted peace. She had learned that honesty cost nothing but earned trust, and that a genuine smile could soften even the hardest day. "Good afternoon, sister," a young man said, stopping in front of her cart. Zainab straightened immediately, her tired face lighting up. "Good afternoon, sir. How many would you like?" 3, please." With practiced hands, she wrapped the plantains in old newspaper, added ground nuts, and calculated the price in her head. She counted his change carefully, placing each coin into his palm, one by one. He stared at the money, surprised. "You gave me too much." "No, sir," Zainab replied calmly. "That is the correct change. I don't shortchange my customers." The man walked away, shaking his head in disbelief. Behind her, Bisi Adeyemi laughed loudly. "Why do you do that?" Bisi said, walking closer, her expensive perfume filling the air. "You're too honest for your own good. That's why you're still wearing the same dress you wore 5 years ago." Another woman, Halima Sadiq, joined in, adjusting her richly decorated headscarf. "Some people are just born to struggle. It's destiny." Zainab did not respond. She had learned that answering cruelty only fed it. Instead, she pulled out her worn notebook and recorded the transaction neatly. Every sale, every expense, every naira was written down. At night, by candlelight, in the small room her aunt grudgingly allowed her to sleep in. She counted her savings hidden in an old tin. 100 naira here, 200 there. Slowly, painfully, she was building towards something that felt impossible. University, education, a different life. 5 years earlier, a road accident had taken her parents from her in a single afternoon. In one moment, she lost her family, her home, and her future. Her aunt, Madame Rukayat Bello, had taken her in not out of love but obligation, and she never allowed Zainab to forget it. "You're late," her cousin Sadia Bello snapped one evening at the market. "Mama says you should come home now. We have guests and you need to cook." "I'm coming," Zainab said quietly, packing her remaining plantains. "Now means now," Sadia said loudly, drawing attention. Before Zainab could respond, the market suddenly fell silent. A convoy of black SUVs rolled slowly down the dusty road. Traders froze. Customers stepped aside. The vehicles were sleek, polished, completely out of place in a market where most people arrived on foot or motorcycle. Whispers spread instantly. "He's back." Al-Haji Suleiman Danjuma is back. The name moved through the air like electricity. By nightfall, the entire village knew the story. The boy who had left decades ago with nothing had returned as a billionaire. He was building factories, creating jobs, looking for entrepreneurs to mentor. Hope and greed danced together in every conversation. The next morning, the market looked different. Nkiru arrived in a new dress that shimmered in the sun. Bisi and Halima followed, transformed overnight, practicing refined walks and speaking in exaggerated accents. Everyone was performing now, acting for an audience of one man they hoped would notice them. A town meeting was announced. Everyone was required to attend. That evening, Madame Ruqayyat dressed in her finest clothes, while Zainab chopped vegetables in silence. "You're not coming," her aunt said flatly. "You'll embarrass us." Zainab watched the village leave, then turned back to the fire. As she cooked alone, she wondered what it would feel like to be seen, not as a burden, but as someone with potential. The next morning, she returned to the market as usual. As she arranged her plantains, an elderly man stopped in front of her cart. His clothes were simple, his manner calm, his eyes sharp and kind. "Roasted plantain," he said gently. "Yes, sir," Zainab replied. "How many?" As she served him, he watched her closely, then smiled. "You work with care. It's the right thing to do," she said. He ate slowly, then asked, "What would you do if you were given a real opportunity?" Zainab hesitated, then answered honestly, "I would learn. I would build something that helps others." The man nodded, his eyes thoughtful. She did not know his name. She did not know his power. She did not know that this simple conversation was the beginning of everything. The old man returned the next morning, just as the sun climbed above the rooftops and the market slowly came alive. Zainab Okorie was arranging her plantains, checking each one carefully, discarding any that were too soft or uneven. She noticed him immediately, not because he stood out, but because he didn't. In a place where everyone was trying so hard to be seen, his simplicity was striking. "Good morning, sir," she greeted him warmly. "Good morning, my daughter," he replied, settling near her cart. "You're here very early again." "I always come early," Zainab said with a small smile. "If I don't prepare well, I can't sell well." He nodded approvingly and ordered the same thing as before. As she worked, they spoke about ordinary things. The weather, the rising cost of food, how difficult life had become for people who worked honestly. The conversation felt natural, unforced, as though they had known each other for years. Nearby, Nkiru Balogun was loudly boasting to anyone who would listen. "I heard Al-Haji Suleiman is selecting people personally, people with class, not just anybody from the roadside." She adjusted her gold bangles deliberately, making sure they caught the light. Zainab paid no attention. She finished serving the old man and handed him his change, exact to the last naira. He looked at her carefully. "You are very disciplined." "My father taught me," she said. "He said discipline is what separates survival from progress." The old man smiled faintly. "Your father was wise. You're—" A young woman approached Zainab's cart, carrying a toddler on her back. Her clothes were worn, her face tired. "Sister," she said softly, "I'm short of money today." Zainab glanced at the child, then quietly added an extra plantain to the package. "Take it. You can pay later." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "May God bless you." After she left, the old man said nothing for a long moment. Then he asked, "Do you not worry about being taken advantage of?" Zainab shrugged. "Maybe, but hunger is worse than loss." He wrote something small in a notebook and closed it. That same afternoon, the town crier moved through the village beating his drum. Al-Haji Suleiman Danjuma was accepting applications for his entrepreneurship mentorship program, funding, training, personal guidance. The deadline was 1 week. The village exploded into activity. Nkiru hired someone from the city to write her proposal. Bisi organized professional photographs. Halima spent hours at an internet cafe, copying business terms she barely understood. At home, Madame Ruqayyat turned the house upside down preparing Sadia's application. "This is our chance," she declared. "Our breakthrough." Money from the household jar was spent freely on printing, clothes, and favors. Zainab watched silently, washing dishes, sweeping floors, saying nothing. That night, when the house was quiet, Zainab lit a candle and sat on the floor. She pulled out clean sheets of paper and began to write. Slowly. Carefully. From her own mind and heart. She wrote about expanding her small business into a modest restaurant, about fair pricing, honest records, and training young people who had nowhere else to turn. She included her handwritten sales records, every transaction accounted for. By dawn, her fingers ached, but her heart felt steady. She submitted the application quietly, just as the sun rose. Days later, the shortlist was posted. Names were read aloud, cheers erupted, then silence. Zainab Okorie. The crowd gasped. Whispers followed her like shadows, accusations, insults, envy dressed as righteousness. That evening, Madame Ruqayyat confronted her in fury. "How dare you apply? If you attend that interview, don't come back here." Zainab said nothing. She had expected this. The next day, even respected women accused her publicly. Only Mama Efe, the elderly vegetable seller, and Brother Ibrahim, the security guard, defended her. On the morning of the interview, Zainab wore her clean but old dress and walked toward the community center alone. Inside, she froze. The old man from the market sat at the table. He looked at her gently and smiled. "Please sit down, Zainab." In that moment, she understood. Zainab's legs trembled as she lowered herself into the chair opposite the panel. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. The elderly man she had spoken to so freely in the market now sat upright in a perfectly tailored suit, his presence commanding without effort. There was no doubt anymore. This was Al-Haji Suleiman Danjuma himself. "Relax," he said kindly, noticing her fear. "Just speak honestly as you always do." To his right sat Mr. Kamau Mensa, a sharp-eyed young man in an expensive suit, clearly impatient. On his left was Ms. Thandaiwan Kube, calm and observant, her pen already poised above her notebook. Mr. Mensa spoke first. "Zainab Okorie, you have no university education, no formal training, and no prior investment experience. Why should we consider you over candidates with polished proposals and professional backgrounds?" Zainab took a breath. The familiar weight of shame tried to rise, but she pushed it down. "Sir, I may not have certificates, but I have 5 years of experience running a business with honesty. I know profit margins, customer trust, cost control, and discipline because my survival depended on them. I learned business the hard way." Ms. Nkube leaned forward. "Your proposal focuses heavily on training disadvantaged youth. That's admirable, but risky. Why take on such a burden?" "Because I was once that burden," Zainab replied softly. "One opportunity can change a life. When people are trusted, they often rise to meet that trust." Mr. Mensa scoffed. "That sounds emotional. Business is about numbers." Zainab nodded. "Yes, sir, and my numbers are here." She pointed to her handwritten records. Every naira accounted for. No losses hidden. No exaggeration. Growth may be slow, but it is real. Al-Haji Suleiman had been silent, watching her closely. Then he asked, "If you succeed, what will you do for those who mocked you? Those spreading lies about you right now?" Zainab paused. Images flashed through her mind, harsh laughter, cruel words, locked doors. Then she answered calmly, "I will help them if I can. Not to prove anything, but because bitterness only destroys the one who carries it." A quiet silence filled the room. "Thank you," Al-Haji Suleiman said. "You may go." Days passed. The village waited. Speculation grew louder. Hope turned into tension. In his hotel room, Al-Haji Suleiman finally spoke to his team. 30 years ago, he said slowly, I was Zainab, poor, orphaned, mocked. I built my success from anger, and it nearly destroyed me. He showed them reports, photographs, recordings, evidence of cruelty, evidence of kindness. She is not just qualified, he concluded. She is necessary. The announcement was scheduled for noon. the entire village gathered. Excitement crackled in the air. Zainab sat at the back beside Mama Ife, her heart steady but uncertain. Al-Haji Suleiman stepped forward. "I have observed you all," he said. "Not just your words, but your actions." Images appeared behind him. Gasps filled the hall. Then he called her name. "Zainab Okori, please stand." She did. "You are the recipient of my full mentorship and funding. 5 million naira, complete business training, university sponsorship." The room erupted. Shock, tears, silence. Madam Rukayat stood up in panic, claiming credit. Al-Haji Suleiman stopped her with one raised hand. "Character reveals itself," he said firmly. Later, as people crowded around Zainab, she walked calmly to her aunt. "When my business opens," she said gently, "there will be a place for Sadia if she wants it." Her aunt broke down. That night, Zainab returned to her old cart one last time. She touched the wood, remembering every sunrise, every insult, every lesson. Tomorrow, everything would change. The days following the announcement felt unreal to Zainab Okori. As though she were walking through a dream she feared might dissolve if she blinked too hard. Wherever she went in the village, eyes followed her. Some were filled with admiration, others with envy, and a few with shame. The same people who once laughed openly now lowered their voices when she passed. Al-Haji Suleiman Danjuma wasted no time. Within a week, arrangements were made for Zainab to relocate temporarily to the city to begin her training. University admission processes were already underway, handled by professionals who spoke of her future as if it were already written in stone. For Zainab, each development felt overwhelming. She listened quietly, nodding, absorbing, determined not to lose herself in the sudden attention. Before leaving, she returned to the market one final time. The wooden cart stood exactly where it always had, worn smooth by years of use. Traders who once mocked her now greeted her respectfully. Nkiru forced a smile, her eyes calculating. Bizi attempted friendliness that rang hollow. Zainab responded politely to all, harboring no anger. The market had taught her patience, and patience had become her shield. Mama Ife hugged her tightly, her frail arms surprisingly strong. "Don't forget where you came from," she whispered. "I won't," Zainab promised. "This place raised me." Brother Ibrahim shook her hand firmly. "You earned this with clean hands. Walk proudly." That evening, Zainab packed her few belongings. Madam Rukayat stood in the doorway, uncertain, smaller somehow than she had ever appeared before. "You didn't have to forgive us," she said quietly. Zainab paused, then replied, "Forgiveness wasn't for you. It was for me." The city was loud, fast, and intimidating. Zainab struggled at first, surrounded by people who spoke confidently about markets, projections, and strategies. But she listened more than she spoke, took notes diligently, and asked thoughtful questions. Al-Haji Suleiman watched her progress closely, offering guidance without controlling her growth. University classes challenged her in ways she had never imagined. Late nights replaced early mornings at the market. Textbooks replaced charcoal smoke, but the discipline remained the same. She worked harder than anyone, not out of fear, but gratitude. Within a year, construction began on a modest restaurant back in the village. It was not flashy, but it was solid, clean, and welcoming. Zainab named it New Dawn Kitchen, a quiet promise to herself and others. True to her word, she hired young people with limited opportunities. She trained them patiently, teaching not just cooking, but honesty, respect, and accountability. Among them was Sadia, humbled but willing to learn. Zainab treated her not as a rival, but as family. The opening day drew crowds from neighboring villages. Al-Haji Suleiman attended quietly, standing at the back, watching Zainab move confidently through the space, guiding her team with calm authority. Pride softened his features. The village had changed slowly but undeniably. Mockery lost its power. Integrity gained respect. Children spoke of Zainab when asked about success. As the sun set on opening day, Zainab stood outside her restaurant, watching people eat, laugh, and work with dignity. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. One part remained. The months after the opening of New Dawn Kitchen passed with steady progress, not dramatic miracles, but real, measurable growth. Zainab Okori insisted on discipline in every detail. Cleanliness was non-negotiable. Fair wages were paid on time. Records were updated daily. Customers noticed the difference, and trust spread faster than any advertisement ever could. Zainab remained deeply involved, arriving early and leaving late. Not because she had to, but because leadership, to her, meant presence. When mistakes happened, she corrected them without humiliation. When someone succeeded, she praised them openly. Slowly, her staff began to carry themselves with pride, understanding that their work mattered. Al-Haji Suleiman Danjuma visited occasionally, never interfering, only observing. One afternoon, as they sat quietly after closing hours, he spoke. "You have done what many educated people fail to do. You built something that respects people." Zainab smiled. "I learned from hunger, sir. It teaches clearly." Word of her business reached beyond the village. Small delegations came to study her methods. Local leaders asked her to speak to youth groups. She agreed when she could, always reminding them that success did not arrive overnight, and that honesty was not weakness. Madame Ruqayyat's health declined with time, and Zainab ensured she was cared for, paying for medical visits without announcing it. When her aunt learned the truth, she wept quietly, ashamed but grateful. Zainab never mentioned the past again. One evening, Zainab walked alone through the market as it closed for the day. The same ground that once echoed with laughter at her expense now carried respectful greetings. She paused where her old wooden cart once stood. It was gone, replaced by another vendor starting a journey of their own. She whispered a prayer of thanks, not for wealth, but for strength. At the end of the year, Al-Haji Suleiman announced his retirement from active business and named Zainab as one of the beneficiaries of his legacy program, designed to mentor future leaders across the region. Cameras flashed, applause filled the hall, but Zainab remained calm, grounded in the lessons that shaped her. That night, she returned home and wrote in her journal, reflecting on a life transformed not by anger or revenge, but by patience, honesty, and quiet perseverance. She closed the book, turned off the light, and rested peacefully. Her story had come full circle, not as a tale of sudden riches, but as proof that character, when tested, always reveals its reward. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. Miriam's journey reminds us that true wealth is not measured by money or appearances, but by the kindness, honesty, and integrity we show every day. No matter how difficult life may seem, your character, patience, and determination can open doors you never imagined. I hope this story inspires you to believe in yourself, work hard, and always choose compassion. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate courage, hope, and the power of the human spirit. Drop a heart in comment, like and subscribe my channel, and visit my channel for more interesting story videos.